So, welcome to another video. And I made a bold claim at the beginning with 80% win rate. So, this episode is all about win percentage and maybe optimizing your build or tracking your game history. And our example for today's win rate experiment is our Izzet Delver build, which is really classic. We are playing 1 Chain Lightning, 1 Preordain, 3 Cutter, 3 Murktide, 1 Brazen and 1 additional land. Sideboard configuration is mostly the same. It can depend from 1 to 1. And if you don't track your win percentage, you gain a really good overview. If you go into settings, game history, at your constructed rating, we are above 1800, which is pretty good. It will indicate a win rate over 80-75%. And to confirm this one, I show you my own chart where I keep track which decks I am facing with a certain build. And you can either choose win or lose and then choose a deck from the meta share. And if it's not known, you can make a description behind. And you see we finished 3 leagues so far. And today we want to complete it by finishing League 4 and 5. So this cheat is a 5-stack League 1. And we see how we end, and maybe if we can contain this bold statement of 80% win rate so far. So let's hop into game 1 of our 1. So we are playing 2 leagues and we are on the draw against a sword size Mox Diamond deck and a Lava Spore Boots, which is pretty bad news because it's indicating Loam Pox, and I really don't like the matchup. I think it's really hard to play. They have Bowmasters, they have a fast clock in form of Saga tokens, and here I'm really feared of Bowmaster, so I'm wasting here the Saga. So he's floating the mana, so no Bowmaster incoming, just taking up the hatchery land so far. And here's a command which will gain back Wasteland. So we are barbing, we see Hogak, so he can use his Wasteland to crack his hatchery, gain some tokens, and Hogak is on the way, but he is deciding to waste our land. Interesting choice so far. I'm not sure of what our opponent is here feared. I can't really tell, but we will see. And the Bowmaster was in hand, or was, yes, it was in hand because we saw the Hogak. And here we try to flip our Delver, which will not be done. So never lucky so far. And we have really bad news incoming. We know that the Hogak is in hand, and here comes a Smallpox. And here I'm just using the lightning bolt to fill our yard up and board our opponent down. But keep in mind we have to discard a land card, so I'm really not sure whether it was a good idea. But either ways, even Murktide will not help. Our opponent can't jump for an eternity, and Hogak is coming down, and we got really smashed by game 1. And even after sideboarding, it will not get that much better. It's really hard to board because we need some certain kind of removal. I think Meltdown is good. I think Price of Brokers can be good to finish out the game if the board state is clunked up with tokens. And so far, I think Extraction is needed against Wasteland, Life from the Loam. I think also the Force of Negation is needed for Smallpox. I think Days can be boarded out. And also Consign is handy because it can trigger at least some Urza Saga stages. And I really want to get rid of all the Delver of Secrets because it really plays into Smallpox, it really plays into Bowmaster. So I'm thinking they can be bought out, but you can as always make an argument. And from this one we are trying with Dragon Mage Chandler. And we really need to flip her immediately because we know our opponent is running Witherbloom command, he's running Bowmasters, so there's no guarantee that she will survive long. And our opponent always has the Mox Diamond, and keep in mind, I think the start with the Mox Diamond is often so good, so overwhelming, and it really makes a huge difference whether they start with a Mox Diamond or not. And they have obviously the known Witherbloom command. So we are a little bit stuck on land, so we have to brainstorm. Our opponent can't cast Bowmasters, and we find a bunch of Lightning Bolt, but I think I want to keep one in hand. Lightning Bolt is not good, it's only good against Bowmasters and going into phase. And our opponent has Urza's Saga, and there is a Quisk incoming, so he's generating a clue. Keep in mind, not a clue, the token cannot fly, so we can fly into the Grist. And I really want to finish her off, because we see a Hogak in the graveyard, and he can't block, and if Quist goes down to 1, he can generate 1 token and cast Hogak from the both tokens. So at least we make sure that Hogak is not incoming next turn. And here I'm going to counter the second stage of the saga to prevent our opponent from generating artifact tokens from the saga. Here's push. I'm not sure whether they come from the sideboard or main, because the configurations mostly change. There is some variance in number of maybe pushes or removal or even barrel golf. So it's really hard to know what list or configuration you are facing. But I think Murktide is also a good option. But keep in mind, if our opponent finds some form of wasteland, he can block Murktide for a pretty long time, and he fetches the Spellbomb, which is, I think, fine. But with our Murktide we have a kind of soft protection, and our opponent agrees and just sacrifices the Spellbomb to draw a card, and he's generating a token from the second saga, so nothing we can really do about it. And from here on we really need to find a guess to burn our opponent out, because we have 1 free attack in the air for 7, and if our opponent fails to crack his hatchery, we have at least 1 more attack in the air and the lightning bolt to finish him off. And even Hogak cannot block, because Hogak has no reach or flying, so he really needs to crack his hatchery. And he found a wasteland, which is pretty bad news. He can now block, and now he's casting Hogak and will equip it with the boots. I think this is a fine opportunity to bounce the Brazen, because I can also bounce a token and lightning bolt 1 token, but then we are off by 1 damage, and I really was hoping that he uses some token to cast Hogak again, which he does, and then we only have to deal with 1 token in the air, but the outcome is the same. We really need some kind of removal, Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, to get rid of the remaining token, because our Murktide is not flying. I make sure that we have Chain Lightning, and even a cutter would be enough, because the token will trigger, and we are lucky and found the second bolt. But even a cutter would be enough. I only made sure that I don't decided some of those out. So cutter and bolt were our outs, and we found them. So I bring really good, but you see how narrow the timing is and how fast the games can change. And for game 3 we are on the draw. Our opponent has a perfect start, Mox Diamond, so in 3 out of 3 games, and Urza Saga, and also a Bowmaster, so all 3 scary cards combined. The Bowmaster is really hard, because we can deal with him with a lightning bolt, but he really is protecting us from drawing cards with our Bauble and developing our cutter. But here's equipping the Bowmaster, so Bowmaster has ward, so we have to keep this in mind. And next turn tokens are incoming. But for now on we really have to stick on the battlefield and play our cutter. And keep in mind, we do not have to crack the Bauble. So the Bauble is just generating a token without a draw. And here I'm really not committed in attacking, because our opponent has the boots available, and so that he can't run us over. And he has a Boseiju for our cutter. We have another one, which is fine, but I think we really needed here both cutter to gain some advantage on the ground. And this is interesting, because he chose not to generate tokens. He's going for the Hogak, so we really now need some kind of miracle. Even a Murktide we can't cast, we can't brainstorm because there's a Bowmaster. We can generate some tokens, and we can also draw into the Bowmaster, at least 1 or 2 draws. So we have to really rely to find a fast Murktide, but for this one we have to stack our graveyard a little bit. So I'm going here for the Surveillant, and we are committed in passing the turn, unfortunately. Our only hope is that maybe he's attacking with the Bowmaster, but I do not think he will. And he's decimizing our battlefield even more with the Fatal Push, and is going now to connect with the Hogak. So there's really not much we can draw, maybe a Brazen, but then the Bowmaster is also sticks on the battlefield. Our opponent is drawing once upon a time, and I really needed to crack one bauble to get an additional draw. We find a Dragonwitch Chandler, but it will not be enough in face of Hogak. And from now on, we really have to make the Desperate Brainstorm play. So if our opponent attacks, we can play a Brainstorm and hopefully find a Brazen Borer after blocking. So I'm going here to block the token, and then I have to Brainstorm, and we really need to find a Brazen. We found one, which could be good. And another cutter on the board. But keep in mind the Bowmaster triggers are incoming. So we are going to 3. And now have to bounce the Hogak. The token will not trample. And we trigger our cutter because the Brazen is the second spell. The first spell was the Brainstorm. And there's still the cutter on top. I think it's okay, it's decent. At least we can deal with that one. And our Dragonwitch Chandler not traded, but he has a Smallpox, so really, really bad news. And from this one, I'm committed in cracking the fetchland. I think we made a slight mistake because we fetched not before the Survey trigger, so we can't really cast Lightning Bolt and keep the card on top. And here I really made a mistake. I pinged, I think, at the Bowmaster, but I forgot the equipment he bought. But it will not matter because our opponent was sacrificing his hatchery and played Hogak again, so it will not change the outcome of the game. So really quick wash by Loam Pox, but it's not a good matchup. And we jump directly into game 2 of the run, or match 2. Our opponent is leading with Underground Sea and Sword Size, so it could be Doomsday or Dimir Tempo. I think Dimir Tempo is most likely, and with the Nethergolf it's confirmed, so it's not a golfless variant, so there's maybe no Barrow Golf in the mainboard. And I think it's a good timing to bow down the Nethergolf, but our opponent has a Daze, but I think it's worth the try, because if the Nethergolf exceeds the toughness of 3, we can't really deal with it on the battlefield. So from now on, our opponent has sorcery, land, and instant. So it has 4 toughness, so it will stick on the battlefield. So we can only fly over with Delver or Dragonwitch Chandler or Murktide, or we have to find a cutter and just overrun our opponent by tokens. And here I'm going for the Murktide. I think our opponent will not likely have another Daze, and even if he's forcing, it's fine as outcome. And we only need to keep an eye whether our opponent is likely to flash in Bowmasters. So there could be a Kaito incoming next turn. So I'm really scared of brainstorming here and even pondering, so I'm waiting for the fetch. And in response of the fetch land, we are going to brainstorm, and we find really not that much Bolt and Dragonwitch Chandler. And our opponent is here going to surveil, but keep in mind our opponent is at 13 life, and we have Murktide on the battlefield and Bolt in hand. So even if he's going for Kaito, we can bolt down the Kaito next turn if he's going to tap our Murktide. But our opponent has a Murktide of his own, which is 1 stats higher than our Murktide. So we are going to surveil. We we find a Brainstorm. I think you can keep the Brainstorm, but we also have to ponder. It's really hard to tell what is here the best play. I think leading with the Dragon Witch Chandler is fine because we can generate some advantage by digging for answers. I think Days could be good if our opponent has maybe a Barrow Golf, but I think it's not confirmed for now. And here I really want to draw a land because then we can play the Brainstorm and getting rid of the Force of Will and draw hopefully the Cutter. And from this on we can get rid of one land, and I think even Lightning Bolt, I think it's a trap. I really want to have another flyer in form of Dragon Witch Chandler, so we are really set up for our next turn. And I think Delver can be gone, and we find another Murktide and also a Bolt on top. And here I want to hide the Murktide on top in case of Swordseize from our opponent. And our opponent is here going to push our Dragon Witch Chandler, which is fine. He's going to attack with the Murktide, which is reasonable because we don't have lethal on the battlefield. And from this configuration on, we have the choice of either playing Murktide first or Cutter first. So here I really want to check our yard first. And I think it's fine to play the Murktide first because I'm a little bit scared of Days, and the Cutter is fine, but the Murktide is our life changer, as to speak, in this game, because it will pump our Murktide Regent and is also bigger than this one of our opponents. And here I'm going to attack. And our opponent is going to 4, and the second Dragon Witch Chandler is some form of defense. So if we play our Bolt, our opponent could be dead, and also we can surveil and maybe block with our Dragon Witch Chandler if our opponent has a removal, but he has not. So really close game, and those games are really close. So there are small decisions and always a huge luck element involved. And for sideboarding, I really want to trim to Delver of Secrets, especially on the draw, because our opponent is a Bowmaster deck, and I really want to get rid of 2 forces. You can also make an argument for trimming Days, but I'm really scared of Barrow Golf, and I really want to make sure that we have a hard answer in form of Force of Will to counter it. And I think for this reason, letting 2 Force of Will into your deck is fine, and I think even the Days has value even on the draw, but I can really see the swap on the draw that we cut 2 Dazes and getting to 4 Force of Wills, but it's always you need a little bit kind of flexibility in those kind of choices. So for this game we are just trading some resources, brainstorming. Here I'm waiting for the brainstorm of our opponent so that we don't get bowmastered. And here I'm going to pyroblast the brainstorm, because you can wait for the Murktide, but we have Brazen Borrower for the Murktide, and even trading Pyroblast 1-1 for a Brainstorm Ponder is fine, because our opponent has Tamio, Brainstorm Ponder and Murktide as blue cards, and also Kaito. And here we want to cast our Murktide. This one will prevent maybe our opponent from playing Bowmasters, and if he's playing Bowmasters he can also Kaito. We have to keep this in mind. And our opponent is drawing a Swamp, which is fine. And yes, indeed, our opponent had a Bowmaster. And here it's interesting, and I really want to force them down because I'm really scared of Kaito. And we can't deal with Kaito just with Brazen Borrower, so I'm thinking it's worth the Force of Will. And we have even a Daze if our opponent plays the Barrow Golf here, and it resolved. So we are ahead on board, but keep in mind our opponent has 3 hand cards and will, as longer the game goes, will outdraw us. So really make sure that we close the game as fast as possible. So we really need to connect twice with the Murktide Regent and then apply some pressure with the Cutter. And even if our opponent had a Murktide of his own, we can equip the cutter and pump our Murktide at least by 1, and it gains trample. And our opponent is here playing Feed the Cycle as a kind of hard removal, which is a good solution for Murktide Regent. And for now on, we are not playing our land. We want to keep it in our hand in case we find a Brainstorm. And our opponent has another Barrowgolf, so there's no need for bouncing it now. We want to make it as a kind of double spell. So we draw a Brainstorm. So I'm thinking bouncing first to prevent daze, and then triggering the cutter with the Brainstorm. Our opponent can daze, but he cannot Bowmaster. And now our opponent is fetching. Interesting choice. And he's playing the push on the token, which is fine, I think. And we find Ponder and Daze. So we can't daze the Barrowgolf. Our opponent has 4 mana. So Barrowgolf will resolve. And from here now on, I think leading with the Ponder. And we find exactly nothing. And here I think you can make an argument for playing the Murktide Regent, or even hardcasting the Brazen Borrower, because playing Murktide Regent as a kind of blocker, but I really like the play pattern in playing Murktide Regent as a kind of surprise and equip it with Cutter immediately, but we have to deal with the Barrowgolf, and the Brazen cannot block. It can only block creatures with flying, so we need the Murktide here as a kind of defense. And if our opponent is willing to offer us the trade, we will accept it. But our opponent had a Snuff Out, so pretty strong card. The life points will not matter because our opponent gains them back with Barrowgolf, and I think we have to block here. If the Barrowgolf still connects, our opponent gains a huge advantage. Our Daze can here counter a Kaito, but the main problem is in front of us in form of Barrowgolf. And from this one on, we can surveil. We can't make a double spell turn. Delver will not help. So there's really nothing which can help. The Barrowgolf is too big even for an Unholy Heat. So I think there's nothing we really can do. But at least I want to make one more draw step. And maybe get another peek at the sideboard configuration of our opponent. We saw Feed the Cycle, we saw Snuff Out. They are both likely coming from the sideboard, I think even Barrowgolf. And what we didn't saw was Force of Will. So I think our opponent maybe bots them out. So that's interesting for keeping track of. And for game 3 we are running the same configuration. So 4 Dazes and 2 Force of Wills. And here we have a pretty good start. Volcanic Island, Dragonmaid Chandler, no Bauble. Our opponent is leading with a Tamio. We can either deal with the Tamio with Lightning Bolt or apply our Cutter. I'm thinking getting rid of Tamio is fine. We find a Brainstorm, which is also decent, but we are going to surveil anyways. So I really would like to bin the Brainstorm to have some kind of fodder for Murktide Regent. And our opponent is sword seizing us. He will likely take the Cutter, and indeed he does. So we are going to surveil end of turn and hopefully find a Murktide or some other form of action. We find a Ponder, which is fine because it can help us to get to Delirium so that our Dragonmaid Chandler is protected from Bowmaster. We find Pyroblast and 2 lands underneath it. I really want to have the Pyroblast, so we can either shuffle or we can draw the Pyroblast and then kind of surveilling with Lightning Bolts. I think that's the safest way because I really value the Pyroblast as a must-have card, and our opponent gives us here an option to get rid of our Pyroblast in form of Brainstorm. So at least we have one surveil trigger on the first of the 2 remaining lands on top of our library. And I'm thinking here I want to draw the Wasteland, not because it's a good card, but our opponent has only 3 lands, and if we waste, we can prevent maybe a hardcast Kaito, or we can maybe prevent that our opponent is going for barrel golf because he do not want to play into days. And here I'm using this opportunity to wasteland our opponent, and I'm not caring about the Bowmaster. Our Dragon Mage channel is flying, we have no Ponder, no Brainstorm remaining, and at least we have double board in hand. So if our opponent forces or fetches, so likely more fetch, because I think he brought it out the Force of Words, he will be dead, and our opponent is going here for the Surveillant. So I think the wasting is pretty crucial, because our opponent has really to think about whether we have days in our deck or not. And we find another Dragon Mage Chandler. So I really like our spot. Our opponent has here another Orcish Bowmaster, but even we don't care. They are fighting on the ground. We have no draw spells. We have 2 lightning bolts. That's our game plan. And here comes the Barrow Golf. So our opponent is not feared of days. I think it's fine. He has to do it because he has no other option. And we find even Unholy Heat. And now our opponent's snuffing out us. I'm not sure why. I don't know, but I think we had to win anyways with double lightning bolt. So let's hop into game 3. We are on the draw. Our hand is decent. We have Wasteland, double Bauble, and 2 lands and 1 basic island. And our opponent is opening here with Tamio. We really don't have an answer. And we have 2 options. We can either waste our opponent or apply our own engine. I'm thinking applying our own engine is better, because then we can pressure the Tamio, and our opponent has no time window in generating clues or using those kind of clues. But we have to deal with this one later. First on, we are cycling, and we see our opponent is drawing another Tundra. So our Wasteland will be live. And we draw a land and a Brazen Bower, which is not spectacular. Our opponent is going to remove our Dragon Mage Chandler, which is fine, I guess, because then he can't crack a clue. And here we can ponder, and we can develop our Wasteland. Here I'm going to waste first to see whether our opponent is casting anything out of it. So the answer is no. And then we are going to ponder. And here we find a Daze, a Cutter, and a Brainstorm. I want to have all of those cards. Maybe not the second Daze, but I think the Cutter and Brainstorm is fine. Our opponent is not a Bowmaster deck. So there's no, you can cast your Brainstorms, they will likely not get countered, and our opponent has a Wasteland of his own, so he's choosing, instead of drawing cards, he's going to waste. And in this configuration, I'm wasting back, because I'm thinking that if our opponent is going to waste, it's a fine opportunity. But here we played into Stifle, so that's a mistake I often make against those kind of decks, because you are so focused on, okay, what is the land state, what we want to do, and you really, or I really often miss that they are running maybe 2 or 3 Stifles. But it happens a lot. So the Stifle was pretty good. Our opponent is ahead on lands. He even has a Caracas to protect his Tamio. And from this one, I think 1 days can be put, or both days can be put down, because we can't really daze anymore. So I'm leading here with a Delver of Secrets. But keep in mind, even if we get back into this game, our opponent generated at least 3 clues. So now comes the 4th clue of the game. So if the game goes longer, our opponent will likely just outdraw us. He's ahead on lands, he's ahead on hand cards. So I think the game is pretty much locked from here. We just have to try to find maybe a window to sneak in some good board state. But our opponent has such good late game power in form of Riddler and Failure, and we really have to make here our land drops. And now our opponent has the ability to just Force of Will hardcast, or cast Force of Will as 5 mana, Here I'm going to block, our opponent is going to brainstorm, and now he has a clock in form of Tamio Ultimate. And even a Stoneforge Mystic. We can deal with that one with the Lightning Bolt, at least for now. And here I'm going to attack the Tamio to keep her in check. And our opponent has a Wasteland, so he can choose either if we fetch to waste us or sacrifice it to draw a card with the clue. So we have to fetch a Volcanic Island. And here I'm going first with the Dragon Rage Chandler, so that we have at least some board state and even some filtering effects to instead opt the quality of our cards. And our opponent has a Force of Will, nothing we can do about this one, and he's cracking the clue. So Tamio is going to uptick, but we can in theory handle her with two attacks from the Dragon Rage Chandler and the Delver of Secrets. And now comes the equipment in form of the Meteor Sword, which will get rid of the Dragon Rage Chandler. And keep in mind, you can also attach the sword. It will give your creature +3/+3. So also the Stoneforge Mystic can be upgraded to a serious clock besides the Tamio. And from here on, I'm trying to cast our cutter and it will resolve. So the days are pretty bad, but we can daze at least our own spells. We will see, but we are fighting against 4 hand cards and 2 clue tokens. And here comes the failure, and we can daze this one. And because we played the cutter, we get at least 1 trigger. Our opponent has a daze of his own. So we are going to try to play our second daze. And our opponent uses his Force of Will with a Quantum Riddler. So our opponent is down to 1 hand card and 2 clue tokens. I think it's fine. We fight, I think, really well, besides that card disadvantage. And now the engine is online. Our opponent can flicker his sword and remove 1 by 1 our battlefield, or even if it's needed, he can flicker his own Stoneforge Mystic. And he even has 2 draws available and can bounce the failure so that he will not trade with combat damage. And this sword comes again, so he's likely going for the cutter to shut down our engine. Our brazen will not help that much. Here I'm going to attack the Tamio and trying to at least get down with the token. I really hope our opponent don't block, but he does not fall for the trap and just blocks. But I think it's worth it to get in the risky line of just bluffing, so that maybe your opponent is not going to block. And from this configuration on, we are free in bolting down the Tamio, because there's no failure incoming for now. And here comes the Murktide. So I think the whole game shows how strong is Tamio if you can't really keep her in check, because our opponent likely draw 5 to 6 cards this game. So we can bounce the Murktide, our opponent can replay the Murktide Regent, and we are playing our last card, Delver of Secrets. It will not help that much, but keep in mind at this time of the game, our game is really down about 11 minutes, and we are ahead on the clock. And with this rate or time rate of the game, we will likely not make it to a game 3 of the run. So I'm not conceding here. I really want, because our opponent has a lot of triggers, to getting some time from his clock, because he's at 13 minutes and we are 1.5 minutes ahead on time. So if it will comes down to a game 3, this kind of time management will matter. because at this play speed, our opponent will not get maybe a game 3 done into time, because we both are a really trigger heavy deck. So I'm just here just pressing through, so at least get half a minute off the clock. So our opponent is clearly winning this game 1, which is no surprise because he draw, I think, 6 or 7 cards more than we did. But at least for now, our win condition for a potential game 3 is just the clock. So I think it's worth it in playing it out and not conceding if you are ahead on time. If not, then conceding is the better option. And yes, make 1 attack more, getting through his triggers, and then we will die and move to game 2. For sideboarding against the Azurius Blade deck, we want at least to have all Pyroblast. We want Unholy Heat. Unholy Heat is good against Phelia, against Stoneforge Mystic. And I really want to get maybe some Consign, and I think Consign could be good. It's a good answer for Stoneforge Mystic and can even shut down 1 Phelia trigger or the trigger from the equipment, but I'm really not sure what to board out, so I'm just sticking in with the Daisies on the play and with 3 Pyroblast and 1 Unholy Heat instead of the Force of Will. Maybe you can make an argument for trimming down 1 Brazen, so I think sideboarding is always a difficult decision, and our Delver will not flip. We find a Volcanic Island, so we are just getting in for 1 and playing our Dragonmage Chandler and our Delver of Secrets. But at this point we are really all in, and keep in mind our opponent or some of those decks have 2 Flood of the Skies from the sideboard. So if we overcommit to the battlefield, our opponent can likely clear our whole board for 3 mana. And with these Swords to Plowshares at the unflipped Delver, our opponent is likely indicating that he do not have Flood of the Skies, but I'm not sure about this one. So we are going to attack. We do not play the Chain Lightning because it will not trigger Delirium immediately, and instead going for the Surveil at the end step of our opponent. And we found an Unholy Heat. Our opponent responds in thwarting our Delver of Secrets, so no flip for us. But the Unholy Heat could be good. It kills down Stoneforge Mystic and Phelia, but unfortunately we cannot develop our own Dragonmage Chandler, so it's just 1 chip of damage every round. But also in 14 rounds it will get the job done. Our greatest fear for now is just a Murktide Regent. We can't really deal with that one. We can deal with Phelia, Stoneforge Mystic, but with Murktide Regent we really would struggle. We find a Bauble, which is good. It's an additional type. Another land, we do not want to draw this one. And we take a peek what our opponent is operating or drawing. So he's drawing his Sword. He has no option in fetching, and I'm taking this time window to Surveil because I really want to get this Dragonmage Chandler online, and putting our opponent also down to a fast clock because we know that our opponent will break next turn. Here comes the Phelia. We have an Unholy Heat for this one, but there's no need in drawing it immediately. We can wait if our opponent has a creature to blink with Phelia, and indeed he has a Stoneforge Mystic, and he will get a pre-warm enchantment. This in not enchantment equipment, and he's pointing and flickering the Stoneforge Mystic. I think it's a fine time window to play our Unholy Heat. And I think the second Dragon Chandler is fine, and we are getting rid of the Stoneforge Mystic. It will not matter that much. Maybe Phelia is the better option, but at least my thoughts was that our opponent has to cast the preform equipment for 3 mana next turn, and we can maybe daze this one. If we go for the Phelia, our opponent can cast it from the Stoneforge Mystic, and we can't interact with that one. And our opponent is wasting us first, which is interesting. So if he's going for the pre-war, he's playing really into days. Not sure about this one. Okay, he has a Murktide Regent, so it will not matter that much. And even if he has gone for the pre-war, he would be dead because we had lethal on the battlefield, so it makes totally sense. And here I'm going just 2 days for the Surveil. And we are putting the land into the graveyard. And hopefully draw good from now on. And we did. We find a lightning bolt. So our opponent can block. And then we board the face. And our opponent needs Force of Will. Days will not help. And we hope this one is enough. And we even find our own Murktide Regent, but I think it will not matter that much. And we took game 2 really close. Those games are always close. It's like Dimir Tempo. It's like of a kind of mirror match. Both players have Dazes, Wastelands, Murktide Regent. And here I'm really considering again the consigned memory. But I really don't see how we can fit those 3 cards in. Maybe the Brazen, but our opponent even has Murktide Regent, so I really want to have a Brazen for a Murktide Regent. And here I'm swapping the Dazes for forces, because I think on the draw, Dazeland could be really dangerous, because then we are always behind lands, and maybe we have to force something as a kind of hard removal. Our opponent leads with a Tamio, which is the best card maybe in the early game. We have a Pyroblast. Pyroblast resolves. We play a Bauble, take a peek at the top of our opponent's library. Our opponent will draw a Ponder. We draw a land, which is not ideal. And our opponent is playing here. And our opponent passes the turn with a Flooded Strand open. So keep in mind, it could be Stifle. We were reminded on this one in game 1 really hard. And he's going for the Surveillant. But I think probably our opponent will maybe board some Stifle out, but I'm not sure. I'm going here for the Brainstorm and trying my luck with the fetch, so no Stifle incoming. And we are going to Surveil. I think Dragonwitch Chandler is fine as a kind of a clock. But keep in mind, our opponent is really telegraphing Ophelia incoming. And he's floating even mana. And indeed, it's Ophelia. So we can counter the creature which our opponent is trying to connect with Ophelia. So it could be a Riddler, it could be a Stonefoot Mystic. We'll see. And our opponent is even wasting us ahead, so that we can't counter with Pyroblast, at least a Quantum Riddler. But there's no creature which our opponent played first, and he's going for the Hydroblast. So our opponent is maybe out of threats, because I think if he had a creature, he would play it. And here I'm not going to play the Delver of Secrets, because I really want to have a card to pitch with Force of Will. And here comes the Quantum Riddler. We are prepared for this one. We can just counter it with Pyroblast so that our opponent can't play it from the exile or advantage, as to speak. So we are taking some hits with the Ophelia. I'm even going here to play the Wasteland to protect our opponent, protect us from our opponent fetching down a Tundra. And we are taking some hits here. Our opponent has 2 cards in hands, most likely removal spells. And I'm not playing the land. We have a Brainstorm. We can play comfortably with 3 lands. And the Delver could be just fodder for the Force of Will. I really want to play a Murktide Regent and protect it by Force of Will. And we find more Delver of Secrets and another fetch land. And here I'm fetching the Volcanic Island to clear the top of our library, playing Ponder. And we find Preordain and 2 lands, but I do not want to have the lands underneath it. And here I'm really committed in using this time window, playing both Delver of Secrets, because with the draw island in our hand, we really find no gas, and at any point of the game we make a decision whether we want to go ahead, and our opponent has Flood of the Skies, and we are trying to counter this one. And 1 days we can pay. See whether our opponent has another days. Most likely, and indeed he has, so we are both empty-handed for now, and our opponent has a failure on board. So he will kill us in 4 more turns. We find a lightning bolt, and in our upkeep I'm going to, and the upkeep of our opponent, I'm going to kill the failure. So our opponent has now really open draw, and he found Stoneforge Mystic, which is good. He gets a pre-warm Informer. So there's nothing we really can do about this one. So I'm going to waste, so that our opponent has to spend the mana to casting it, getting maybe back Tamio or Ophelia, most likely Ophelia, I think. And interesting, our opponent did not play it. Maybe he wants to play to the Stoneforge Mystic, I'm not sure. Yes, indeed. So he's getting back the failure, I think. But keep in mind, our opponent is at nearly 40 seconds at the clock. So he really has 1 more turn to attack. And he's flickering the Stoneforge Mystic. I'm not a fan if you have 20 seconds on the clock. But we'll see whether our opponent gets his time done. And we find a Murktide Regent, which is a big problem for our opponent, because we can comfortably block and even generate a clue. So I think our opponent will not get us down even with a mover spell in 12 seconds. But we will see, and even he needs some time to click 2 hour triggers. So I think we really get this game by just the time. Opponent is even brainstorming, so 4 seconds left. And I think he will not make it into the attack step. So 2 seconds, 1 second, and Spots of Plowshares done. So we get this game by time. Not really fair, but sometimes it is some legit strategy, as to speak. And for round 4 of the run, we are playing against some Yorion deck, so maybe Death and Texas is incoming. So our opponent is opening here with a basic island. Here our game plan is to grab our Surveillant, get a peek at the top of our library, and then following up by Core Steel Cutter with Bauble, and have at least 1 force as a kind of backup, and have a Brainstorm to continue on our next turn. The Core Steel Cutter resolves. We get in with our Bauble, take a peek at the top of our opponent's library. We see a Caracas, and now our opponent is applying his Swords to Plowshare at our token, which is, I think, totally fine. If we draw a Murktide on the line, his chances of being uncontested are probably higher. But it could also mean that our opponent has another Swords to Plowshares, so he's loosely playing it on the first token. I'm not sure. But here we are leading with the Brainstorm. I think Wasteland can be put back on top, and also at least 1 days, so that we have a shuffle available with the Flooded Strand. So we are putting back the second days. Then we play out our Fetchland and our Bauble as the second spell, which goes uncontested. Take a look at the top of our opponent's library, and then we play our Murktide Regent, and we will see whether it will stick to the battlefield. We have the choice of maybe countering with Force of Will if anything goes wrong, and have a Daze as a kind of backup for maybe a Recruiter of the Guard or some 3-drop spell. And our opponent is going to Solitude. We are forcing back, and hopefully that's enough, and have a Daze in case our opponent is playing something for 3 mana, which is not unheard of. And we draw a second Murktide. We can't cast him now, but we'll see later on. And indeed, our opponent is playing a 3-drop in form of Recruiter of the Guard. We are going to Daze, picking up our Surveillant, so that we can generate some graveyard value for our Murktide in hand. And it's enough. Our opponent conceded here. So for sideboarding, it's a definite Texas matchup. We want to consign to memory. It's pretty handy. You can counter an Etherval. You can counter a lot of triggers, as we have seen, Recruit of the Guard. Solitude is also a triggered ability, and also some blink or flickering effects. So consign is really handy. Maybe some Stoneforge Mystic. I'm not sure whether our opponent is running those kind. You can also trigger, of course, the Yorion ability. And Unholy Heat is also fine because there are a lot of small creatures. Pyroblast could be also handy because our opponent showed us blue. So we want at least some Pyroblast around. So I'm trimming here Forces and Dazes. We have an overlap of 1 Force of Will. It's not ideal on paper, but I have no better idea for sideboarding. So we stick at least with 1 Force of Will. We will see whether this will matter or not. I'm not satisfied with the sideboarding, but that was my thought there. It's not perfect, but we really want to have the Unholy Heat. And with this configuration, we take it slow. We are not opening with Dragon Mage Chandler because I really want to consign up if our opponent plays a Stoneforge Mystic, for example, because we have no Lightning Bolt, we just have Pyroblast, and our opponent is flashing in his failure, so nothing we can do about it for now. We find a Ponder. Difficult decision. We have a Brainstorm already, but Ponder is also a sorcery for Dragon Mage Chandler. It really depends on how fast our opponent can develop his failure. So I think at least for now we can play our Dragon Mage Chandler and leave a Brainstorm and consign and Pyroblast up to see whether our opponent has something to develop with failure. If he has a Murktide Riddler, we can Pyroblast it. And what he has here, just take a read, enter such a library for a basic Plains card or a creature card with mana value 1 or less. So it's a kind of tutor effect for a basic land or a creature with power 1, mana value 1 or less. So it's likely maybe some kind of utility creature or Tamio. So I think it's fine. Our opponent shows us Tamio, we can Pyroblast her, no problem. And here we are going to consign the triggered ability, not because the creature tutor is so strong, but because I really want to avoid that our opponent has another creature body with flying onto the battlefield. So we take the 2 of the failure, the creature is gone, and our opponent's left with Failure and Tamio. We have a Lightning Bolt for Failure or Tamio. And now we have to pick our poison, as to speak. And I'm going here with the Pyroblast, because we can point the Lightning Bolt at Failure if we can't deal with the outcome. And here I'm going to Ponder. I really want to hit our land drop, and we find consign land. I think I want to draw the volcanic island and let the consign underneath it. So in case we do not want to draw the consign, we can bolt the failure, or we can just stay with the consign on top. And here our opponent has a wasteland and a lion stash. So lion stash is some kind of creature which can remove cards from our yard, but he has to pay at least 1 white mana, so he can't remove any cards with Wasteland, and he's not flickering with the failure. And at the end of our turn, I'm going here for the lion stash. It's not ideal. Our opponent can remove 1 card from our yard, but keep in mind the graveyard is really important. We have a Dragon Mage Chandler and we have a Murktide Regent in hand, so we can't ignore it, at least for now. Our opponent is not using his Wasteland, which is interesting. He let us go into our turn with 3 mana, so at least we want to take 3 damage away from our opponent. and I'm leading here with the Preordain because I want to get rid of the land which is known on top. And we see Wasteland, we do not want this one. And I think also the Brainstorm, we do not want this. We have another Brainstorm incoming. And here I'm going to Brainstorm even further. And we see another Murktide, which we will keep on top. And another Bauble. So I think we put back Wasteland. And then we have to make a decision what card to bin. So I'm stacking Murktide Wasteland, playing Bauble, getting rid of the Wasteland so that our Murktide Regent stays on top, and take a peek at the top of our opponent's library, which is just a flooded strand. Our opponent is not using his Wasteland, so we have to keep this in mind. So this can mean that he really needs 5 mana, maybe for hardcast Force of Will or even hardcast Quantum Whittler. We have to keep this one in our head. And he's playing the same creature as Noun, but here as a full creature body. So you can pick up a basic land or Tamio again, and he chose to going for the Tamio. And he can flicker it again, but it will not change the outcome. He cast it as a full creature. So I'm not sure about this one. And the creature comes back either ways, and he grabs another Tamio, which is fine. We do not care about this one. So we play our Brainstorm. We find Delver, which is a little bit too late to the party, and Cutter, which can be really handy, especially with Murktide Regent, because we can give our Murktide Regent haste and trample, which is really, really useful there. But we have to keep in mind we have a Murktide Regent, and our opponent has a failure, and of course he can flicker our Murktide Regent there. So my plan is here to play the Chorus Steel Cutter first, get rid of the Delver of Secret, which is on top, then play a little Murktide so that our opponent has some valid target for flickering with the failure. And then on the swing back we play our second Murktide and can give it also haste with the Cutter. I think it's a fine plan to make our opponent not that suspicious about it. I'm going to pump the Murktide a little bit so that we have enough power on the backswing and do not shrink our Dragon Rage Chandler, so that he has so that he will choose the Murktide Regent instead of the token, or is not that suspicious about it, and we trade the Dragon Rage Chandler with the creature, which is fine. And we'll see what our opponent is doing here. He's playing a Witch Enchanter, which can get rid of the Core Steel Cutter. Pretty good draw from our opponent. And we'll see what he wants to flicker. So he's going for the Murktide Regent, which is fine. So our Murktide Regent comes back as a 3/3 creature. And from now on, we can just play our second Dragon Rage Chandler. Our opponent has a known Tamio in hand, and I think 2 unknown cards. So we can't wait, we have to go for it. And here we are removing all what is left, so that we have enough power that our Murktide Regent can push through, so that our opponent has at least to make a jump block with the Tamio. And keep in mind, both Murktides are evenly strong. So even if our opponent has to make the jump block, then on the swing back, the failure can just deal with 1 Murktide Regent. So he's dead on the back swing anyways. So it will not matter. Even if we place a Tamio, we have 2 flyers available. So jump will likely not matter that much. And he's picking up Yorion. We can deal with the triggered ability, and we can even consign the trigger from the failure if we like to, but our opponent concedes anyways. So we are 3-1 on the last game of the first one of the 4th league so far. Our opponent is leading with Ancient Tome Defense Grid. We have to force this because it means our opponent is likely a combo deck, maybe of some kind of storm type. and we are going to waste his resource and hope that's enough, and have at least a Dragon Rage Chandler with Bauble on the following turn. And our opponent is playing a Grim Monolith. Okay, so it's maybe some kind of Mystic Forge with defense crit inside. I'm not sure, but now we see Lion's Eye Diamond. Okay, so pretty interesting choices so far, and Intuition. Okay, so it's really something special here, and he's going for the Echo. Okay, so he's sacrificing his LED, playing his Echo of Eons, but he has no protection. So if we find a Force, we are maybe fine. And bad news, he finds a defense grid, so nothing we really can do about it. I think we have to waste again. Our opponent didn't show us any ability to untap his monolith, so he's stuck with a Opal, so maybe it's not enough mana generation. I think the Wasteland is fine. He goes for another Mox Opal, okay. And Chromox also, so most likely a kind of Storm deck with Monolith and Intuition, okay. And he's going for Mind's Desire, okay. Old card. And he finds some good utility in form of Gamble and Squasher. This is the new Goblin card, which makes all spells uncountable and has ward pay to life, and the ward pay to life is also applied on every creature of our opponent's side. And our opponent is here going to gamble, likely, I'm not sure, maybe for another Echo of Eons, I think. I'm not sure. But he passes, so there's really nothing we can do about here. I'm thinking it's just fine for applying a threat and passing, because defense grid is in play. We can't really do anything on the opponent's turn. And I think from this point the game is pretty much lost, but we continue playing, not because we think we can win, because we want to take a peek at our opponent's deck, because it's really interesting. We saw Grim Monolith, we saw mainboard defense grid, we see even a Flash Raker, so it seems to be some kind of hybrid Storm Mystic Forge deck with blue for Mind's Desire, Intuition, and we also see Squasher and Gamble. So I'm really not sure how our opponent fits all those cards into a 60 card shell. I'm not sure. Maybe it's all one-offs. I don't know. But it seems at least interesting. And we saw Intuition and Mind's Desire. So pretty cool cards. And yeah, I'm just playing Delve of Secrets in case that our opponent on a miracle has just no juice in hand, so that we have at least a 2-turn clock. But I think our opponent has it here really in the book, and I'm just curious what our opponent, or how he has configured it, is his deck. So another Lion's Eye Diamond, and we're getting some pings on the way from the Flashbreaker. So maybe he's also playing some PO, I'm not sure. So Intuition, so probably for Echo of Eons. Not, it's for Lion's Eye Diamond, okay. Interesting. So maybe he has some kind of Hellkite, I'm not sure. Okay, he's getting back the Echo of Eons. Just want to generate more mana on the line. And we draw a fresh 7 here, but keep in mind defense grid is active and our opponent finds a second Flashbreaker. So what we can assume from here is that our opponent is a Storm deck with Echo of Eons. So he's probably not playing over the graveyard, because we didn't see any kind of besiege outlet. So instead he's just opting for Intuition, and the win condition is not some kind of storm, it's just playing with Flashbreakers. I think that's safe to assume from now. What means this for sideboarding? It means at least we are surely going for the Consign to Memories and the Force of Negation. Also, we saw Gamble and Squasher, so I think we have to bring in the Pyroblast, and also we saw Intuition. So I think Pyroblast can go also in, and also Meltdown for the all Monolith and maybe more. And we want to get rid of all the useless stuff, so Core Steel Cutter can go out, it's too slow. Brazen can go out, Daze is too slow. Chain Lightning will not matter, and if we cut Core Steel Cutter, we can also cut one Pyrodine, and also getting rid of 2 boards. I want to keep some boards around for maybe a Flashbreaker or Squasher. And we'll see whether this pays out. But I think we have a lot of sideboard cards against this hybrid archetype. And I'm also not thinking it's a good archetype, because you are carrying the weakness point from Mystic Forge over in a Storm deck without having a clear benefit. And he's also running Urza Saga. So I'm not sure. It seems like we are playing against 3 different decks. But at least for now, we have Wasteland Online, we have Force, we have Consign to Memory. So we are going to waste the Urza's Saga. And our opponent has another Saga, we have another Wasteland. So it's fine. And I think it's just safe to waste again. And I'm really patient here with the Dragonbridge Chandler, but I think from now on we have to make a move, because we need at some point some kind of clock, because if the game is even, then we have a disadvantage, and we have to present at least some form of clock. And we find 3 really good cards. So Force of Will, Pyroblast, Consign. We want to take all those cards, so no need for applying the fetch land, because we want to draw 2 the cards on top. Maybe not the second Pyroblast, but it depends on, at least we can counter some form of intuition. And with the third Saga in play, I think we have to consign the triggered ability to make sure that our opponent cannot play any kind of clues. And here I'm going to fetch, because I think we had a second Pyroblast on top, and I think 2 Pyroblast is maybe too much. If our opponent shows us no intuition for now, or at least no mana source to cast it. So we countered the second chapter, and from now on we have another Wasteland, and I'm thinking it's safe to play it on the Ancient Tomb, because the Saga will be gone next round. Sure, our opponent can search up some Lotus Petal, Chromox, Mox Opal, so I think likely maybe a Lotus Petal. Chromox will not help, or even LED. Sure, if he has an Echo in hand, but if he has an Echo, we have a Pyroblast, so I'm not worried about this one. And from here on, we just have to make sure that we reach Delirium to put our opponent under some pressure, and our opponent will draw a gamble. So we are going to surveil, Delver of Secrets. Maybe you can keep it, but I'm not interested in this one. We have Pyroblast, Consign, and Force of Will. I think Delver, it's not interesting, but at least it's a blue card. You can make both arguments, but our opponent had enough, and we are running the same configuration again, and hopefully it will suit us well. And our hand seems strong. We have Double Force, we have Consign and the Bauble, and we are on the draw. We have 53 cards left in our library, and we are running, I think, 18 lands. We bought out some basic island, so I think we have a 1 in 3 chance to draw a land, and with the Bauble we have an additional card draw available, and I'm taking here the risk in just bricking, because we have at least 3 draws. So if we miss on the first draw, it's not relevant. We really need at least 1 land to play the game, and we have 3 draws for it. So the chances is, I think, about 1/3 that we draw a land, and I think it's fine because we have a really stacked hand. But our opponent has, unfortunately, Urza Saga with Cormox. Maybe we had countered the Cormox here. I think it was a little bit lazy. So we draw another Force of Will, but unfortunately we have to discard. And I think now our opponent will run with the game. He's just killing us by generating Saga tokens. So the risk doesn't pay off here. But I think it's fine, and it is reasonable to take some kind of those risk. Maybe you can make an argument for just taking the mulligan, but I think on the draw with 2 forces and consign, and we have no land, 18 lands in the deck, and even Wasteland would be counted as a land because it would kill the Urza Saga. I think it's fine, it's a calculated risk, and sometimes those kind of risk didn't pay off, but it was at least a calculated decision. So 3 and 2 for our 4th league, and we are starting here in our 5th league. It's the first match of the run. We are playing against Stryfo, which is known by some brews of his own. So we will see what deck he brings to the table. So he's opening with a polluted delta, underground scene Tamio, so it seems likely just it's Dimir Tempo. But, or maybe Doomsday, could also be true, I'm not sure. And for now on, we have no lightning bolt for Tamio, and I didn't want to force the Tamio because I think it's often not worth it in the long run. So I'm just reaching Delirium as fast as I could. And our opponent takes some time here to think about the bubble. And if we are lucky, at least, we can reach the Delirium this turn if we find an instant or sorcery, or instant sorcery with our outs. Then he can't attack. But unfortunately, we just see a land on top. And here comes the difficult decision. Do we want to keep the land on top or not? If we put it down and we daze, we can maybe find an instant on sorcery, but we will draw the land anyways with the 2 barbel triggers, and we lead another land, at least if our opponent is going to wasteland us. So I think it's fine. We find a board for Tamio, maybe, and our opponent shows us here a tiger, which means he's running green and red. So it could be some kind of Dimir Tempo deck with just a light splash of red and maybe green for some utility cards, maybe carpet, maybe some command, I'm not sure. But at least we are leading with Core Steel Cutter, which will win us likely the game if it's uncontested. Our opponent is going to force over it, and we are doing the same. And here I'm pitching the Brazen Brower because I'm thinking if our opponent wants at least 2 more colors, maybe Murktide Regent is not that kind of problem, I'm not sure. And our opponent forces not back, so it's a new card. You can change the target of target spell or ability, but it costs you at least, I think, 5 life, which our opponent paid here. And we are going to force this one. Brainstorm on top is welcome if Cutter resolves, and keep in mind, because we forced over it, the Cutter will not generate any tokens this turn, but for the next turn we have Brainstorm and Lightning Bolt incoming, and because our opponent paid 5 life for the changing ability, he's at 10 for now. He's fetching, going to 9, and drawing some cards, flipping the Tamio, so that he can reduce the damage by Cutter and Dragonweight Sheller incoming. But I think it's maybe too late. We are going to Brainstorm. We find a Ponder. Ponder's welcome. I think Dragonweight Sheller is fine. Also Murktide Regent. But for now, we are just playing the Dragonweight Sheller. I want to keep the Lightning Bolt in hand. It will not matter this turn. And we are going to attack for I think here if we calculated 3 damage, and I'm not going to attack the Tamio, I'm going to attack Stryfo's face, because Tamio uptick is far away. He has no valid target to getting some good stuff back, just some Ponder and Force, so it's not worth the downtick, because if we downtick, he can't reduce the clock of our own. So I think it's the right decision, and with the board on top, we apply a lot of pressure. And he fetched once, so he's at 5 life, and he's playing Assassin's Trophy, which is fine. We are going to decline the shuffle because we have a ponder on top, and here we are just pondering and playing lightning board. And keep in mind, our opponent shows us maybe all dual-lands in existence. He has Bayou and Tropical Island and Tiger, so I think he's maybe a 4-color or 5-color control deck, maybe 4-color. So I think Price of Brokers is set to bring in. Even we saw Tamio, I think Pyroblast is fine, and we saw Tiger, so maybe Hydroblast is also good. I'm not sure how big his Red Splash is. We are cutting Chain Lightning, Brazen Borber, and Dazes. I think those cards can be put away, because I'm thinking he's likely more kind of control deck. Our starting hand is fine. We have Delver, some form of Blast, and Murktide Regent, but our opponent shows us bad news here. He opens with a Carpet of Flower, which often feels like a Black Lotus, because even in a control deck, it's accelerating our opponent so fast that we are always behind. So he can play on a second turn Uro. So playing also a land, so opponent is, at least if we play a land, has 5-6 mana available on, I think it's our second turn, the third turn for our opponent. We find the Price of Brokers, which can be maybe a good shot if our opponent is lazy with his lands, maybe. So I'm playing the Delver and keep open one of the blasts to prevent something bad from happening. But the game is pretty much over if our opponent has some utility in his hand, which I think he does. But we will fight anyways. We have an own game plan in just shooting our opponent with the price. And here he plays Barrow Golf, so neither of those blasts are good. We have to emergency brainstorm, and we find a Force of Will, but we can't protect the Force of Will with a Pyroblast. So I think the price and Pyroblast can be put on top for now. So at least we can flip our Delvers with the Price of Brokers. So I do not want to show our opponent that we have a Pyroblast on top, and our opponent is playing his brainstorm of his own. So maybe he found a Pyroblast, and yes, indeed. So Barrow Golf will stick to the battlefield. Our Delver will flip, and really bad news, we have Murktide as a chance to deal maybe with Barrow Golf. I want to take a peek at the top of our opponent's library here, and here I'm thinking whether I want to attack or block, because the Delver can at least for now block off the Barrow Golf, which I think is their purpose, at least for now, until we have a Murktide Regent available. But keep in mind, our opponent has also the Uro remaining in his graveyard, and with the Carpet of Flowers he can generate those needed green mana sources to play him back. And here our opponent has Pernicious Deed, so no Pyroblast in the world could save us here. He's killing our board and connecting with a huge Barrow Golf, so it's pretty much a good game for now. And here I'm cutting the Hydroblast. I'm not sure. We saw a lot of black cards, so I want at least to bring in some Dazes back, so that we can counter maybe a Carpet, because we are now on the play, or even a Barrow Golf, for example. So I'm just thinking here maybe also Force of Negation. If our opponents maybe also running Beanstalk, I'm not sure. And also Unholy Heat, we saw Barrow Golf, could also be handy, so I'm swapping out one Lightning Bolt for Unholy Heat. the 2 Hydroblast for 2 Force of Negations, which I think is maybe the safest route to deal with a carpet, and also it has the assumption that our opponent is playing some form of Beanstalk, but I'm really not sure. But at least for now, we are opening with a Dragon Rage Chandler and a Bauble, and the hand is not ideal. We have the Surveillant in hand, so we maybe have to find a Brainstorm, and also we have to keep in mind that maybe our opponent, he shows us a strong black count on his deck, so maybe he's also running some form or some numbers of Bowmasters. You will never be really sure when you are fighting against those control piles how their configuration is on detail. So I'm leading here with the Ponder, bin the Delver of Secrets, and hopefully can put some cards on top. So I really want to draw the Wasteland. We have a Lightning Bolt on top, so that we can make sure that our Delver will flip. And a land underneath it, so that we can play 1 Lightning Bolt to filter out then the top of our library. And we really crossing fingers that our opponent does not have any kind of Bowmaster to deal with our unflipped Delver of Secrets. He's Brainstorm at the end of his turn, which is a sign of weakness, I think, because you really want to Brainstorm in your turn because you see 1 card more. And he's also island siding Lorien Revealed, so he's maybe short on lands. And keep in mind, our opponent searched here for a volcanic island and he plays a swamp. This means that he really wants to make sure that he hits 3 mana, and I think the opponent's game plan here is pretty easy. He's searching for, or he's planning to play a Barrowgolf. That's the reason why he played the swamp first, so that we can't waste him off 3 mana, which is a really smart play. And to prevent the Barrowgolf, I think it's fine to surveil first, put the remaining card in our graveyard, which was known, and just play even a small Murktide Regent to apply some form of pressure. And this will get rid of Delirium, but we have 2 Lightning Bolts remaining. But our opponent says no, and he's forcing with pitching Drown in the Loch. So I think it's a good exchange. At least it means our opponent's likely not having any other counters. And our opponent is playing here the Misty Rainforest and fetching for green. He's not playing the Volcanic Island, so maybe no Barrowgolf incoming, or he just want to test the water with the Uro first, because the Uro gains some life back. So, and he's likely not dead on the backswing. So I think maybe our opponent tested us here just for the days. And at least our opponent now played the Volcanic Island, so our Wasteland has at least some utility. But I think wasting is not a good option. We are just casting the Core Steel Cutter of the Wasteland, so that we have Double Bolt available, and see what our Delirium gives us here. Force of Will we can put back, it will not matter. The Cutter resolves, so we are playing the Bolt just in the face of our opponent. And even if our opponent has a Barrowgolf, it will not matter, because we can fly over with the remaining Delver of Secrets and Dragon Rage Chandler. I think for now the biggest out of our opponent is just Punisher's Deed, but if we hit the Delirium, our opponent is dead anyways, so it will likely not matter. And indeed, so I think close game, pretty grindy one, but we were lucky that we were on the play on the last game, which really matters in the face of Carpet of Flowers. And we are hopping here direct into game 2 of the second league. Our opponent is opening with an Undercity Sewers, so we are going to waste this one. It's, I think, always a sign of weakness, and Volcanic Island, so at least Grixis confirmed. So it could be some kind of Grixis Tempo or Grixis Control. I'm not sure, because our opponent fetched for or played Volcanic Island, I think it's most likely some form of Grixis Tempo, because often the control decks are going for basics first. And here we are just playing Delve of Secrets with a Bauble and hope that our opponent doesn't have a Bowmaster. And for now he has some kind of removal in form of Fatal Push. I think it's better than a Bowmaster, so I'm not fighting over it, because we want to save our forces for our own Murktide Regent. And our opponent shows us a Force of Will, so we have to keep this one in mind. And here I'm going to ponder, and we see another Delver of Secrets, Core Steel Cutter. I think we really want the Steel Cutter and maybe the land underneath it to play at least with our Steel Cutter. And our opponent is island cycling the Lore Revealed for a basic island. So I think this is designed that our opponent is a control deck. He's not a tempo deck. And because a Lore Revealed, it's a card you often find in control decks, not in a tempo deck. So I think we are playing against Grixis Control for now. So Cutter has a really high value, and it also means that our opponent is likely not playing Wasteland and is not playing Dazes. So Force of Will is his only counter, and maybe he has access to Kolaghan's command, which can deal with our Core Steel Cutter. And maybe also, really, I think, some kind of Bowmaster and maybe also Kaito. But anyways, I'm going just to play our Cutter and board the face, because we have to get some value down the line. And keep in mind, our opponent has a Force of Will in hand, which we know about it, and he was not willing to fight over the Core Steel Cutter, which means, in my opinion, that he has maybe some Kolaghan's command, or is taking his life as a resource to find those Kolaghan's command, maybe, or has some form of other answer available. We will see. And indeed, our opponent had a Murktide Regent, so he thought that maybe he can hold back the Cutter by Murktide Regent. We are not fighting over the Murktide Regent, we are picking the fight over the Brazen Borer, because we play the Brazen Borer as a kind of bounce spell. Our opponent forces, we force back, and the force back of our own is the second spell, so that we get at least remove the Murktide from the battlefield and generated another token and get at least 2 prowess triggers on the line. So that's the way why I do not fight it over a fort over the Murktide on our opponent's turn. So we put our opponent under a big pressure. So he's at 8 life with fetching, and we have 2 tokens on the battlefield. And if things goes wrong, we can just play the Brazen Borer from Adventure or Exile, as to speak. And our opponent has 5 mana, so it could be also maybe a Force hardcast or some other stuff, or Kolaghan's command. And he's playing the Edict, which is probably fine, I think. It's maybe a sign of desperation. And here we have to think how we want to distribute our turn. We can either just attack, flashback the Brazen, or we can play our Murktide Regent and equip it immediately with the Cutter, which is lethal. And I'm taking here the risk in just playing the Murktide Regent. I think our opponent has no Edict, no Force remaining, and hopefully this will win us the game. And indeed it does, so the risk pays off so far. And for sideboarding, I think Pyroblast is welcome. Also Hydroblast, we didn't saw any kind of Kolaghan's command, but I think our opponent will at least have those maybe after sideboarding. Chain Lightning is weak. I think even Brazen Borer can be boarded out. We have Pyroblast for Murktide Regent. Also, I'm not a fan of Daze, because our opponent is a control player, and control players often really have a lot of expertise and are likely not playing into Daze. So I think Daze can be bought out really easily, boarded out, and we'll see how game 2 will develop. We have a little bit land heavy starting hand, but I think against control it's fine. We have a core steel cutter, we have ponder, so we can fix our hand pretty easily. We also have access to our surveillant, and our opponent is not likely killing us fast. So we are just pondering through, finding some stuff in our graveyard for maybe later Murktide Regent. We have a lightning bolt in case our opponent finds a Bowmaster or Tamio. And our opponent is now playing Brainstorm in his turn, which is fine, with the fetch land available. And we are drawing the known Delver of Secrets, and here we have to make a decision. We can either ponder, delver, or cutter, and I think it's a good spot just for playing cutter. Even we have no second spell, and our opponent had to force it, and he even pitched a Snapcaster, which is pretty fine, I think. So at least we generated some card advantage, and our opponent fetched here for the basic swamp. So one black mana means often cling to dust, and indeed, so one cling is in our opponent's graveyard. So we have to keep track on this one. For now, he can play it again with exiling a bunch of cards, I think 5 cards from his own yard, and paying 4 life to get rid of 1 card. And it's a kind of card advantage spell, as to speak, or he can even remove a creature and gain some life back. Both modes will matter in the long term, so we have to keep an eye on this one. And for now, we are just trying to establish another clock, and here we have the option in pondering further, and I think Dragonwitch Sheller is fine as a kind of second clock after the Triad Cutter. Our opponent is trying to deal with it one-to-one with a lightning bolt, which is also fine, and he has another Cling to Dusk, so I think the second one will not matter that much. Okay, so he's island cycling and an island, okay. Interesting. So he island cycled for an island and played a fetch land, so at least he has 1 more island in hand, so 2 unknown cards. For now, we are going to surveil. We didn't want the volcanic island. Wasteland is not ideal, and brainstorm, force. Maybe at least we can flip the Delver with some form of brainstorm, I think. I think double brainstorm is better than a shuffle, but it's a really high risk in playing into Bowmaster. I think we have a lightning bolt for the double brainstorm, but I'm not feeling that comfortable with this line. But I think it has no alternative, because a blind shuffle will maybe not be better than double brainstorm. I'm not sure. Our opponent is here going for the surveillant and has a push for Delver of Secrets, so 1 island in hand and 1 unknown card for now, and the Cling to Dust is active on his graveyard, and he has a hardcast Kaito. And you see here a good example. Our opponent really had the discipline to play around days, and even bluffed or had a Pyroblast as a form of backup, but he can't Pyroblast. But I think at least for now it's safe to assume that our opponent maybe has for the last card in his hand a Pyroblast. So we have to keep this in mind if we want to play our Murktide Regent, that we have to force the Pyroblast from our opponent. And we are going now for the Murktide Regent, because with an active Cling it will not get better down the line. And with 1 card remaining, it's a good tempo window, I think. Our opponent did not play the Pyroblast. Interesting. So maybe just a good bluff. But at least we were prepared with the Force of Will. And here's a Barrowgirth. This one we have to force. And 1 unknown card remaining. So we draw the Lightning Bolt, which is a known card. And we attack and have lethal next turn. So our Murktide Regent has power of 7, Bolt is 3, so it's 10. So he's island cycling, interesting. For a volcanic island. I'm not sure. So we are going to attack. Hope that our opponent has no removal. And we are going patient here with the lightning bolt. Because our opponent is going to play the Cling to Dusk. So at least he can't counter because he has no days. And even days would not win the game. And this should be GG. Yes, indeed. And we won the match. So welcome back. We are on the match 3 of the second league. We are 2-0. We won against some 4-color control deck and Grixis Control. We are on the draw against an unknown opponent, and we have Totoke Mulligan, and our opponent has the nickname of TES Jesus. So maybe it's indicating some kind of storm, I don't know, but he shows us a Chromox and a Cavern. So I think initiative is confirmed for now, and he has no play, so we are going to waste the Cavern of Swords. Keep in mind, Lightning Bolt is not good against of any of those initiative creatures. He has 3 kind of those. He has a red, a green, and a white one. The white one is the scariest one. The white and the green one are toughness 4, and the red one has a toughness of 3. So Lightning Bolt can kill only the red initiative creature. So that we have to keep in mind. And he has the Seasoned Dungeon, which is the white initiative creature, and it's the scariest one because if she attacks, she has protection from creatures, and she also will explore, so she will pump up her clock on her own. So we are really under the gun, as to speak, and we for now have to rely on the power of our Delver of Secrets, so that we maybe can fight back and then maybe double board the Seasoned Dungeon here to get back into the game and have maybe a daze for some incoming another creature, but we will see. For now on, we are taking a bunch of damage. And our opponent has another Seasoned Dungeon here. This one we have to daze. And our opponent has a Seaman Spirit Guide to pay for the daze, so we can concede from here. So we are playing against initiative. That means we want at least to have Consign to memory, which can counter the initiative trigger. We want Unholy Heat as a kind of better removal than Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning. Daze is pretty useless. We saw Cavern, we saw Spirit Guides, so it's not good. Hydroblast is maybe, I'm not sure how big his red elements are, but at least I want to take one Hydroblast with me against the red initiative creature. I think we need some lightning bolts, but they are not pretty in this matchup. And we see how we fight through the game. And our starting hand is good. We have Dragon Age Chandler, we have Consign and Force, so we can survive the first wave of aggression by our opponent. If our opponent does not have a Cavern of Swords, obviously. If he's starting with a Cavern of Swords, then we have to rely on the Consign to memory, because we can't counter the creature, but we can counter the initiative trigger. And we are now just connecting for 1. Our opponent is playing a Mountain, which means maybe our opponent has Pyroblast from a sideboard, so we have to keep this in mind. Force of Will we are binning because we have a Force, and double Force is not good if our opponent has really a Pyroblast or maybe some Cavern later on. And from here on, I really want to keep, I think, both lands. So we put the Volcanic Island on top and the Fetch land underneath it, so that we can at least play our Cutter to apply some pressure. And Cutter is, I think, one of the best cards in the matchup, because it gives us the ability to go on a really big range on the battlefield, so that we can just overrun our opponent and fighting over the initiative if it's applied to the battlefield. And our opponent is here leading with this Crasher, so I think we need more Hydroblast from the sideboard, and maybe keep an eye at the count of our lightning bolts, because the Squasher, it's a new card, as said several times, which is pretty good. It's a goblin card. It gives, or it makes that your spells are uncountable, and also ward pay to life for itself, and also for every other creature. So we are going to Unholy Heat it now, generating a token on the line, paying the ward here exactly, and getting some trigger. We know the top card of our library, so we are going to shuffle, and another Murktide Regent, which is fine, because I think our opponent can't really deal with a Murktide Regent unless he brings maybe some Pyroblast or Endurance from the sideboard. Here's the mentioned Cavern of Swords, so Force of Will is gone for now, and our opponent is leading here with the green creature. We can't counter it, but we are going to counter the initiative trigger. It's a triggered ability, so Consign is live. We know the Murktide Regent on top. You can make an argument for putting it into the graveyard, but I think it's fine. We can maybe play both Murktide Regent this game. So I really want to have a second one around, and even the second one will pump the first one. And we have a Dragon Rage Chandler, so that we can fill our yard pretty easily back. And for now we have no good attacks, so we are passing the turn with a 5/5 Murktide Regent, which is bigger than the green creature. And we'll see what our opponent is playing here. So he's playing the red creature, which is fine because our opponent can't attack. So he has the initiative, but we can get the initiative just by attacking with the Murktide Regent. We are going to fetch here, I think. And I really want to fill up our yard, maybe with an instant or sorcery. Or maybe, I think Artifact is also welcome. And we find a Brazen Borer, which is fine, I think. We can bounce some creature. And we are now playing the Murktide Regent for half the price. So we have to at least pay 3 mana, and getting 3 more triggers on the first Murktide Regent, and can attack safely with the first one, getting the initiative, and have the Brazen on top. And I really would like to decline this trigger, but I can't. So I have to search, but I'm able to fail the search, but I have to search. So we keep this in mind that we can't deny the trigger, so we have to search. Our opponent is here going to connect with both of his creatures, and we can block one off, but our opponent conceded here. For game 3, I want to bring in the additional Hydroblast because we saw the Squasher, and I think cutting one Preodine is fine. And for the final game of this match, we are on the draw. Our opponent mulligan to 6. He opens with a Wasteland. We really don't care. We have a basic island. We play our Delver of Secrets, and for the next turn we have Cutter available with Mishra's Bauble. And our opponent is playing here Ancient Tomb. So no colored mana for our opponent, at least for now. So we are free for the Cutter. Our opponent is maybe going to waste us, we will see. So first things first, we apply the Cutter trigger with the Bauble. Our Delver didn't flip, so we don't sacrifice our Bauble for now. We hold the Bauble for our opponent's turn to take a peek at the top of our library, so that we can arrange the order of the triggers to likely flip our Delver. In case of emergency, we can also brainstorm. Our opponent has here Cavern and Squasher, so no countering for us. And he plays a Sage of the Skies, which is a 2/3 flying creature with lifelink and storm. So he gets 2 copies out of it, so the card maybe comes from the sideboard. we take a peek at the top of our own library. We saw an volcanic island, so we are going to draw, and we are going to reveal a Dragon Rage Chandler. So a fail for us. I didn't want to brainstorm because we want to play another cutter. So I really hope that our Delver will flip, but he doesn't. So we continue in just playing the cutter as the first spell of our round. And now I think we can also heat or going for the Dragon Rage Chandler. There's no need for brainstorming now. I think here just playing the heat to get at least one blocker off the battlefield is fine. And we only can kill this Crasher for now. So we are going after him, paying the ward first. So 2 life goes down for us. We are generating 2 tokens, but keep in mind we do not want to re-equip the first token, because the first token then stays at 3/3 and can push through one of the remaining blockers. So we did not equip the new token from the first cutter, so that we at least can push some damage through. So some minor details, but those details matter at least in the long run. Our opponent has Wasteland available to waste us off. I'm not sure. I think the game is pretty locked from here. Our opponent is going to connect to get at least 4 life points. But keep in mind, we have double cutter. Here comes the Dungeoneer. I really don't care at this moment. Just one creature at the ground. We have double cutter, brainstorm, Dragon Rage Chandler. So, and hopefully flip our Delver. And we can now brainstorm in our upkeep because it's the first spell. And hopefully find another spell. We find another brainstorm. So we make sure to put at least one spell on top to flip our Delver of Secrets. And he will flip. Then we play our Dragon Rage Chandler. And keep in mind, we know the top card of our library, which is the remaining card. And here I'm going to brainstorm, get a bunch of triggers, and we even have a fetch land after this one, and getting rid of the land, which we know about, applying the browse triggers of the tokens, and then draw some cards. We find a lightning bolt, another spell, and a brazen borrower, and our opponent had enough, and double cutter wins the game. So we are 3-0, and we are playing our 4th match of the second league one. We are on the play. We have a pretty good hand, double Delver, force and cutter. So we are a little bit weak to a wasteland, but at least then we have a threat in play. Our opponent is leading here with a kind of commander Eldrazi creature, which will reduce the cost and pump his Eldrazi creatures. I'm going here to waste, not because the creature is scary, but because it's a huge tempo advantage, because we are going to waste our opponent off, playing our second Delver and getting hopefully enough damage through the air before our opponent can develop his game plan. And our opponent has here a Wasteland and a Lotus Petal, another Lotus Petal, and we'll see what he will cast from this one. Our trigger shows a daze, so Delver will flip. Our opponent is declining to waste us, so maybe he needs for a mana, maybe for some Sword Knots here, I'm not quite sure. And we have a land on top, which is welcome, and we can fetch. We have I think a brainstorm on top. Our opponent is going down to 11, and he plays an Eldrazi Temple. So there comes a Sword Knots here. Our opponent plays around days, which is totally reasonable. So our cutter will be gone, and from now on we have the choice. We have brainstorm on top, so no need for fetching now. We are getting with 6 damage to the air, putting our opponent at 5. So we have lethal next turn. And I think we want to cast the Dragon Rage Chandler this turn, maybe keep Daze or Brazen up. So I'm thinking fetching is fine, because we only can keep 2 cards. So we have Dragon Rage Chandler as a security option, but we need Delirium for now, and a kind of removal spell in form of Brazen Borrower. Our opponent is going to bounce one Delver, which likely will not matter that much for now. We are taking 4 by the Sword Knot Seer. Our opponent is at 5. We find a lightning bolt, so game 1 goes in the books for us. We attack, make sure our opponent blocks it off, and then play the lightning bolt in case anything goes wrong, so that we at least make a trade out of it, but it will not matter that much. And we are moving to game 2. And for sideboarding, we want all the consigned to memories. We want all of the Unholy Heat, so 1 copy at least. And what we want to bring out is 4 Dazes. And you can make an argument maybe for Meltdown, maybe for Force of Negation. Some iteration are running Grim Monolith. Chalice is also seen. But I think Meltdown is not a good card because it only hits Chalice. Same can be said for Force of Negation, maybe a Kozilek's Command, but for now I'm not willing to oversideboard, just swapping out the Dazes with Consign and 1 Unholy Heat is fine. We have a good start, we have Basic Island, Bauble Delver. Our opponent only is leading with Waste and Ancient Tomb, so here comes a Flashbreaker. We have to counter this one because it will accelerate our opponent really quickly, and our opponent can now next turn maybe play a Sword Knot Seer. We make the stacks correctly, just drawing the land, and hopefully here I'm going to make it sure that our Delver will flip and casting the Brainstorm, but it also means that we are weak to Sword Knot Seer because we can't hide the Murktide Regent, so we made the trade-off in applying pressure and are weaker against Sword Knot Seer, but those kinds of things you have to calculate. If the Delver does not flip, it's not a huge clock. Our opponent is going to remove it with Kozilek's Command. I think it's absolute fine use of the command, so I'm not scared of this one. And next turn we can play our Murktide Regent. At least for now we have Force of Will and Brainstorm in our yard, and we want to make sure to put our Murktide Regent at least at the stats of 6/6, because I'm a little bit scared of Dismember, so that our Murktide Regent does not get hit by Dismember for 5. So we play the Preordain first, then our Murktide Regent, and then he is 6/6 and out of reach for Dismember, and hopefully it carries us to the game. And you see here that I didn't crack the bubble, because in case our opponent plays a Sword Knot Seer, that we can hide the maybe drawn card. So I think it's minor details, but it could matter in the long run. Our opponent's playing here Flash Waker, which is fine, nothing we can do about it. We have our opponent at a 2-turn clock, so hopefully we find maybe a Consign or Force to get some protection in, because Flash Waker is always a little bit scary, because it can really kill you in a really fast pace. So we are getting through a bunch of lands. We find a Wasteland and Consign to Memory, and also a Cutter. And from this one we keep the Consign. I think Wasteland maybe will not matter, because our opponent has 2 tokens and Flashbreaker. It will not deny us our opponent so hard. So I'm thinking binning the Wasteland is fine. Here comes another Flashbreaker, and from this one I'm not going to counter, because I'm thinking our opponent has 3 hand cards remaining, and I didn't see how he can kill us in this quick manner. And here he's casting the Kozilek's Command. I think it's our go sign for Consign to Memory. We can even replicate it once, so that we can at least counter 1 Flashbreaker trigger and the Kozilek's Command itself, which is fine, I guess, because then our opponent has 4 mana remaining, and I'm not sure, even if he plays a Sword Knot Seer, how he can kill us from there. So I really think he needs the Kozilek's Command to develop his further gameplay, and I think the cutter can be put into the bin. It likely will not matter. And here I'm going just to apply the replicate trigger, and hopefully it's enough. Our opponent goes down to 3, and unfortunately he has a line breaker. So this is lethal. I didn't thought about this one. I really was focused on not getting the Kozilek's command through, and he even had a battle mage, so it would not matter if we waited. He had the removal, as to speak, for the Murktide anyways, so very well played by our opponent. So really close, really close. We move to game 3, and we are on the play, which is a huge advantage in those kind of grindy tempo matchups. Our hand is decent. We have Dragon Red Chandler, Ponder, Wasteland, and Consign. And I'm going here for the Dragon Red Chandler. In case that anything goes wrong, we have at least a clock on the battlefield and see what our opponent is casting. Here he's playing Wasteland, not using it, and hard casting this member. I think it's fine. So our opponent paid at least 4 life. Here we have the option to waste the Wasteland of our opponent. I'm not a huge fan of this one, so I'm going to Ponder instead. And we see a Lightning Bolt and a Murktide Regent. I think a Lightning Bolt is fine. It kills Linebreaker and Flashbreaker, so 2 important creatures which our opponent can cast, at least on turn 2 with a Soulland. He's here playing the kind of Lord effect. I think it's a good use of Lightning Bolt to get rid at least of those kind of creature. And I'm really interested in wasting the colored land, because for the Linebreaker itself is colorless, but our opponent needs at least 1 colored mana source, and I think it's a good spot for wasting him off his colored mana source, so that he even can't use his Wasteland in wasting us, because then he's so low on resources, and that our Murktide Regent can win the game. Keep in mind, the Murktide Regent only has 2 counters, so if our opponent has a second Dismember, he can kill our Murktide Regent, and here comes the Linebreaker, cast from a Simian Spirit Guide, so nothing we can really do about it, but the Linebreaker is too weak to attack, so our Murktide will hold him on check, and from here on we really have to make sure that we don't die and win the game. So I'm thinking Bauble is fine. We have at least 1 more draw. We have a Brainstorm on top. Our opponent will draw a Chalice of Void, which we can counter with the Consign if needed, or Brainstorm in response, but I think Consign is fine. But our opponent has to pay 2 life, so it's over, and our opponent just conceded because he didn't see how he can win from there. So really quick game, and we move on the final game of the final round. We are 4-0, so this is our so-called trophy match. We are playing against an unknown opponent, at least for me. We have a good starting hand, Delver, Bauble, Dragon Red Chandler, Chain Lightning, so we are prepared. We are lacking Dazes and Forces. Our opponent leads with a basic Swamp and Nethergolf. So I'm thinking it could be Dimir Tempo, or it could be some form of mono black aggro. Both kinds play Nethergolf. We are going to flip our Delver, and the Nethergolf is 1-2, and I think it's really important to kill the Nethergolf while we can. If the Nethergolf exceeds 3 toughness, we can't really deal with him, and he really holds us back, not on the air, but in case we draw a Cutter, and Cutter is also an important spell. But here I'm going to decline those kind of option, because I'm thinking it's more important to develop our Dragon Red Chandler, because I'm also feared of another card in name of Orcish Bowmaster, and I wanted to use this time window to develop our Dragon Red Chandler to Delirium, so that she can't die from Orcish Bowmaster. And our opponent played Fatal Push and a Bayou and Moonshadow. So it's the new card. Every time a permanent from our opponent goes into the graveyard, even from the top of his library, then Moonshadow gets one counter or one counter removed until she reaches 7/7 and she has Menace. So we have to keep this in mind. And from this point on, we had to play the Brainstorm because our opponent is likely an Orcish Bowmaster deck. And here I'm taking the spot to kill the Nethergolf with the Chain Lightning. So unfortunately, we will also trigger the Moonshadow, which can really get out of control. We have no clean answer for her besides bouncing with Brazen Borer or maybe blocking her down with some tokens. So we really have to make sure to close the game as fast as possible. We have the tools for this in form of Steel Cutter and Pyodine, but our opponent has also a cup with a Wasteland, so he can waste us twice, once this turn, which he does, and he can waste us off next turn and also trigger Moonshadow. So a pretty good combination, and from this point on we can confirm that we are not playing against mono black aggro and not against Dimir Tempo. We are playing against some green black, maybe stompy configuration with Cups, Wastelands, Nethergolf, maybe Snuff Out. So pretty scary for us. Maybe also some endurance in the sideboard, I'm not sure. But we make sure for now that we raise our opponent. We offer the trade with the token, our opponent accepts, and also the Moonshadow triggers once again. So she's now 4/4. With the Wasteland in play, she's 5/5. So our opponent is now forced cycling, okay, so it makes sense. Even that one will trigger, I think, Moonshadow. So our opponent puts us here at a 2-turn clock. One attack for now and one next turn. And our opponent is at healthy 10 life. So we are really in danger. We really need to draw maybe a Murktide Regent or some, I think Cutter could be it. Our opponent is going to snuff out here. I'm not a fan of this one because he goes from 10 to 6. So we have an out in form of Lightning Bolt. I think it's a huge mistake. In snuff outing here, if we don't snuff out, he stays at 7. So he's at 6 and we have a creature if we counter. But we just draw a daze. We are going to attack and scare our opponent and just tapping one red mana and conceding. So really close game. And I think we are facing a really hard deck to beat. He has Orcish Bowmaster, Nethergolf, Cups and Wasteland, so it's pretty hard to interact. I think what we want is Unholy Heat, and that's it. I think Daze is pretty good in this kind of spots. We didn't saw any kind of mana acceleration in form of Spirit's Guide, Elfish Spirit Guides or Mox Diamond, so I think Daze is fine, especially on the play. Our hand is a little bit sketchy, but we have a land on top and we have a Cutter, and I think in those kind of matchups Cutter is really good because it can generate some card advantage, and our opponent is here leading with Bauble and some form of cycling creature, I think, and Overgrown Tomb. So I think maybe he's also running Death Shadow, so some Death Shadow, not Dimir, but just with Green Splash for maybe Cup, maybe Endurance, maybe even Carpet of Flowers, I'm not sure, or the green cycling creature. For now on, I'm seeing these cycling creatures and I'm really scared of some form of reanimate, and here it comes. So really unexpected. I didn't really pay attention in game 1. I really just thought that the cycling effect is just for Moonshadow. So we have to force the reanimate and can daze the sword size. And if you paid attention, the force was our first spell, the daze our second spell, so we generated one clue in our opponent's turn and can now generate the second clue. And here I'm playing the Brainstorm because our opponent is an Orcish Bowmaster deck and it's a good opportunity to play the Brainstorm unpunished. We have a Bauble on top. I think we want to keep it because Bauble is a free spell. And here I'm leading with Land Bauble, so that we have Force of Will available as a hard counter, because our opponent likely wants Barrow Golf, maybe in the main, maybe in the sideboard, so that we can counter an Barrow Golf with 2 mana. And here's just a cup, there's no need for countering this one. He doesn't achieve anything, we don't care. our creatures run it over and fly over, so it will not matter. We save our force of will for something important. The flooded strand can go into the graveyard. The bauble will trigger, ponders our second spell. And if you notice, I didn't crack the bauble because our opponent also runs Swordseize. So in case we have something good on top, that we can manipulate the draw, but our opponent just conceded from here. So for sideboarding, we saw the kind of reanimate engine with the cycling creatures. I think Brazen is fine in bringing him or her back. The main question is what we want to cut. I think cutting 2 Delver on the draw is fine. So we have 1 card remaining, and I'm thinking I want to put at least 1 surgical extraction in the deck because I'm so that we can counter those kind of reanimate effects. But I'm not sure how big this reanimate engine is. Maybe he's running 4, maybe he's running 2. I'm not sure about it. Or maybe he bought some out. I'm not sure. But I think 1 surgical, 1 brazen for an unknown opponent, an unknown deck is fine. Unfortunately, we have to mulligan. Our hand is fine. We have Dragon Red Chandler, Daze, and Ponder. Our opponent also has a good start with Swordseize, which is expected. So it could be a really grindy game. I think here we have to lead with Basic Island to protect us against a Wasteland. We have a Ponder with double Cutter, which seems fine. I think Cutter's a decent card in those kind of matchups. And we have an Island as a kind of soft protection. And see how we can play from here. So our opponent is indicating a Bowmaster. So we are free in playing our Cutter. And we have to make a decision whether we want to counter Bowmaster, but instead he's just forced cycling those kind of creature. As you didn't know the creature, he or she is 6/7 and has reach if he is able to bring him or her back. And our opponent had a reanimate, so he paid the life. He's at 10 and has even a Death Shadow and also a token or some kind of food, so he can generate I think 2 or 3 life at will. So really hard board for us, no lie. Our Unholy Heat can't kill those kind of elephant, so we really have to develop our Cutter engine, unfortunately, and hope to maybe generate as many tokens as we can. And here I'm going to play the Murktide so that we at least get 1 token, because if we played the Cutter now, we wouldn't generate 2 tokens, just 1 token. So 1 token now, and maybe next turn Cutter and Unholy Heat. And maybe Murktide can at least apply some pressure. But keep in mind the green creature can block. She has reach. Our opponent is going down even further at 7. So no fear for our opponent because he has those kind of food token available and a second Death Shadow. So the board is pretty good. I think the most important card here was the Wasteland from our opponent because it destroys our plans in playing Cutter and maybe Unholy Heat at some point. And we draw another Cutter, which is good, but not with a lack of mana or usage. So we can't attack, the elephant is blocking, so there's no good blocks available, and we have, I think, to pass the turn. We can play the Cutter, but then we have to make some jump blocks, or we can maybe Unholy Heat and Daze, our own Unholy Heat, generate some token, maybe. So I'm passing here. Unfortunately, our opponent has even a Fatal Push, so really good cards for our opponent, the Wasteland and the Push. So from now on we only have 1 option to make a jump block with the Murktide and then play our Unholy Heat to finish at least 1 Death Shadow off and Daze our own Unholy Heat, but it's all not that good. And we'll see what our opponent is doing here. So he has 1 trigger from the bauble. And at the end of turn, I'm going for the line, just playing the Unholy Heat, making sure I control it correctly in holding priority with control. So just make sure the key binding is correct, and then hold control down, playing the Unholy Heat, and then hopefully we hold priority, and indeed, and then we can daze our own spell, bringing back the island and generating at least one clue and getting rid of the Death Shadow. But I'm really not sure what we can draw here. I think maybe a Brazen Borrower could be good to bounce those this elephant, but then even we have to maybe jump the Death Shadow, so not good overall. So I think the game is over. We can play our cutter and then concede, I think, from here. And our opponent even had a Bowmaster. So pretty well drawn from our opponent. And nothing we can really do about it. He drew Wasteland, push, Bowmaster, and I think the key feature just was to reanimate on the elephant. So unfortunately, 4-1 for the one. So for the last part of the video, we want to add in League 4 and League 5. In our calculation, we finished League 4 with a record of 3-2, loss against Loam Pox and Storm, and League 5 we finished 4-1 with a close loss against the Black and Green Pile. This converted overall in a win percentage of exactly 80%, so this means that we won 4 out of 5 games over a course of 5 leagues, or as to speak 25 matches, and I think it shows it's not too shabby at all, and the title is not a clickbait. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope that we'll see us back in another video.